It is Thursday, the 18th of November, 2021. Thanks for watching the Calvary briefing today. This will be the last briefing before Thanksgiving. We will take next week off, and so I thought it appropriate to bring up a subject that is probably very applicable to all of us as we enter into the week ahead of us. I was impacted by an article by Scott Hubbard entitled Food Rules, How God Reshapes Our Appetites. And so today, 1 week away from Thanksgiving, I want to talk to you about eating and your eating habits. Many of us are impulsive eaters. And as you think about the reality of the biblical world and the world in general, it is interesting to note what Moses described as the world's very first sin in Genesis 3:6. She took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Have you ever thought about the fact that Adam and Eve were not sent out of the garden because of murder or adultery or theft or lying or blasphemy? They were sent out of the garden because of eating. They ate their way out of the Garden of Eden. And sometimes so do we. Food problems are probably familiar to each one of us. We probably fall on one of two sides. Some of us are looking at the world and we sort of take the attitude of Luke 12:19, eat, drink, and be merry. And we're very happy to say, God made chocolate cake and all the frosting, and I'm going to enjoy every bit of it. And so we imbibe and we eat, and maybe we even overeat and we over-enjoy food. But there are others of us who deny. There are others of us who could take as their motto Colossians 2:21. Do not handle, do not taste, do not touch. Some of us have calorie counters on our phones. We buy brand new digital scales all the time. We are very conscious of the food pyramid, and we are counting every calorie and not taking what God has created and eating. Well, God gives us every good and every perfect gift. How do we look at eating, even on a day like Thanksgiving, in the right biblical, Christ-honoring, Christ-following way? Well, Hubbard, in his article, talks about appetite redeemed. And he rightfully points out that in 1 Corinthians 11:1, Paul said, be imitators of me as I am of Christ. Now, some of us take that verse and say, well, look at the way Paul lived. Look at the way he was a strong witness for Christ. Look at how he planted churches. Look how he served Christ and the way he went about his life. But if you look at 1 Corinthians 11 in the context of the book of 1 Corinthians, you find that he was talking about all sorts of eating things and saying, hey, be an imitator of me as I have the right appetite to follow. Now, certainly there were other things in Paul's life that he encouraged the Corinthians to imitate, but the immediate context was all around a bunch of food stuff that was happening in the lives of the Corinthians. Hubbard also points out the life of Jesus Christ. If you think about the Gospels, think about all of the feasts that Christ was at. Think of the fact that his very first miracle was multiplying wine. He was oftentimes eating at the home of a Pharisee or a tax collector. He regularly dined. There's a lot of times there were a lot of times in the Gospels that Jesus was eating with his disciples and with many others. And yet, in spite of the fact that Jesus was at feasts, in spite of the fact that he was in these situations where there were opportunities to dine together, it's at these times in the Gospels that we read that Jesus was all about paying attention to others. The meal was an opportunity for him to talk to others about what it meant to be a follower of God, what life was all about as a follower of Jesus. Jesus was not a glutton, he wasn't a drunkard, but we also know from his temptation that Jesus was able to fast. And so Jesus had a right handle on appetite. He knew that his relationship with the Father was first and foremost, and it was that relationship with the Father that gave him the ability to go to a feast and enjoy it, but yet was able to indicate to him when it was time to fast and to not eat. Hubbard writes, "We eat, drink, and abstain to the glory of God only when we, like Jesus, taste God as being our choicest food." We eat and drink and abstain to the glory of God only when we, like Jesus, taste God himself as our choicest food. The article that Hubbard writes closes with these words, "Admittedly, the line between just enough and too much is a blurry one, and even the most mature can fail to notice that border until they've eaten beyond it. Even still, between the overflowing plate of indulgence and the empty plate of denial is a third plate, one we increasingly discern and choose as the Spirit refines our heart's palate. Here we neither indulge nor deny our appetites, but like our Lord Jesus, we direct them." So Hubbard encourages us as we feast on Thanksgiving Day to enjoy the food that God has given to us, but to also be able to move away from the table and to move away when we have had enough. And he encourages us, and so, as you walk away, perhaps hum a tune to God who is good, to God who is enough. Christ is enough for me. Christ is enough for me. Everything I need is in you. Everything I need.